Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to talk briefly a little bit more about my Nissan cargo high top van and the custom panels that I needed to make to fit the upper side panels and the roof of the van, the ceiling rather of the van. The Nissan cargo van that I have is an SV model of their 2500 series with the V8 engine. And the SV is the mid-grade model of the Nissan van. With that, it came with the mid wall and the lower wall, both sides, a fiberboard, a very thin fiberboard press panel that was just in natural wood. So I opted to paint that along with the rest of the wood and the interior that I created. Most of it is gray. It's very practical. I like a neutral color. I will continue to spice it up with more colorful things as time goes. I knew that I wanted and needed to build custom upper panels and a ceiling, not just so that it looks nice, but so that it would hold my Havelock wool in place. Without that, it both looks ridiculous and the wool just gets everywhere. So 3 of the considerations: what material to use, how am I going to frame out a template for cutting it, how am I going to mount it in my van. For the wood material, I opted to use 1/4-inch birch plywood from your local big box store. I think it was a balance of, for me, size and weight. I didn't need it to be extremely stable. I just needed it to keep the wall together for my wool insulation behind, and also have a small place to mount things on the front side. I kept with the same paint color, gray, that I had matched with a close friend and relative of mine who also has an NV cargo van and opted for a gray schematic. It's a very neutral color because I do a lot of work in my van, in media and editing and on the computer. I do like a very neutral palette. All right, so choosing the wood, I went with 1/4-inch birch or a good high quality grade plywood. You really don't want to skimp out on any plywood you purchase. You want to look at things like how many layers are they using, where is it coming from, is it warped, are there a lot of knots in it. At some point, getting the least expensive product may come back to bite you, because you're going to find that the workmanship or the quality of the product is not going to hold up to long-term use. You're going to end up with weird cracks, stress fractures, pieces will crack off for no reason. So with Nissan, unlike some of the other brands, I love this van, don't get me wrong, but the interior dimension is a little confusing with how they chose to build it. There is rarely ever any straight or angled dimension. The van basically comes in from the sides, and it also warps in from the back. So when you go to cut a straight line, it's never going to be quite straight because you have to trim everything, because all the walls are slightly angled and the straight lines are curved more or less. So it creates a bit more complexity in one's hope to plug and play kind of a template. So I found what I had to do first is get a bunch of cardboard boxes. I use cardboard for everything: painting, trimming, templates. And this is what I had to start with to just get an initial fit. Is I used a big piece of cardboard for the top. The bottom of each piece ends on a smooth straight line, so that I wasn't worried about, but the top fit was, for the way that I chose to install, a bit complicated. The wiring loom is actually interior of the van upper corner wall, which you'll see, and I opted to leave that. It's clean, it's nice, I like the way they did it. I saw no reason to reroute Nissan's factory wiring harness, so I left everything the way it is and built around it. To do that, I really needed to take my trim pieces up and underneath the loom so that it would fully seat and sit nice and tight and pretty. So to do that, I used a large piece of cardboard as an upper template. And I could basically just use a Sharpie or a pencil, push the piece of cardboard up, and start matching out the different cut lines to fill the different pieces of the loom that had wiring coming out of it. So I knew where the gaps that I needed in that eventual trim piece to go. And then a lot of it like much of this van was put it in, try a little piece, trim a little off, shave a little off, take it back into the van, test fit it. Am I close? Is it working? Are the measurements correct? Take it back out, trim a little more, sand it down, and go from there. So for the side panels, there were 2 side panels on the driver's side and 1 panel on the passenger side. I created those first, and then actually it was a couple months later I got around to the ceiling, and I was able to spend time and energy to create the ceiling. I also did the ceiling panels out of 1/4 inch, but I had seen someone else use single sheets and cut them out of 4x8 to go across the van. I opted to do the same way. It was quite challenging, but I like how it fit. Rather than go the length of the van, front to back, I went side to side and was able to cover the ceiling in just 3 sheets of 1/4 inch. Once they were fit, once they were tested, I put in some LED lighting, and I screwed those in as well with sheet metal screws. When we talk about mounting, there are many ways to mount everything in your van. I would argue there's no one right way. It's going to look at what is the material, what is your purpose, what are your concerns about rattling or loosening, how easy is it to get to it if you need to tighten it or replace it or something. So for pretty much everything in my van, I opted to use cutting oil and drill small pilot holes for sheet metal screws and mount everything in screws. And that gives me the ability to go around, keep them tight, unmount them if I need to, and over time, if the hole or the screw should weaken, I can put in a larger piece. Other people, you can use rivets for many things. You can use plus nuts for things. People use all kinds of different fasteners, and you just need to look at the different choices and decide, is one going to kind of be a permanent installation? Is that what you want? Is one going to give you more flexibility if you need to change what's there or unmount it to get behind something? So considerations for when you think about building. For me, a sheet metal screw was the way to go. Really great strength, easy to put in, and flexibility should I need to remove, reinstall, change my mounting positions, things like that. Kept the very modular approach that I've always gone with here. That is it for today's episode. Thanks so much for joining. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see all this madness unleashed in every episode. We will eventually get to even more exciting things as I start to talk about the KTM 390 adventure motorcycles and start to share some of the footage I've taken along the way of my adventures. But we're wrapping up the build soon. Episode 4 coming out. Thanks so much for watching this episode. I'll see you soon.